See, Jeremy, Salt Lake City. You're on the Wilkow Majority. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Yes, sir.
First time caller, short listener. Hey, I just wanted you to define for me what you believe the word conservative actually means.
Okay. Are we going to say that conservation is a part of conservatism? Are we going to play word games here?
No, we're not going to play word games. I just think it's really ironic that a lot of people who identify with the conservative movement are those who also back people who say things like drill, baby, drill. It seems like you definitely defined it right. The idea of true conservatism is to conserve, whether that be monetary aspects in our economy or resources. I think you're absolutely right, and I would agree with that. It's to conserve. But I don't see how drill, baby, drill. Okay, we have a resource, petroleum, that we all know is running out. It's not a renewable resource. I don't know when we're going to run out of it, but at the rate we're going at some point, there's not going to be any more.
So the really smart idea is until we have this renewable energy, we lop off the energy that's available to us and twiddle our thumbs and hope that there isn't a huge chasm between when we shut off what we know works and until we get what we want to work online.
So what is the best way we go about doing that? I mean, I would personally think that we would have to start changing our infrastructure in order to make that transition over. And so when you have people that are talking about solar panels on rooftops, high-speed rail.
Yeah, the problem. Well, first of all, we don't need what is the purpose of high-speed rail? What is this fantasy that high-speed rail is going to save everything?
Have you been to Denver? Have you been to Atlanta? Places that have extraordinary urban sprawl issues, where you have people that come from generally the same area of these outer suburbs and commute to the same area of commerce to conduct business, and in large numbers. I mean, thousands and thousands.
Well, that's a problem for the city of Atlanta and the state of Georgia to deal with. The federal government has no constitutional authority to tell the fine folks of Atlanta, Georgia, where they can and cannot live and how they're going to get to work or to school. That is not a power of the federal government. If it does exist, you tell me where it is in the Constitution.
No, you're absolutely right. The federal government does not have the power to control what states do as far as their own local issues are concerned. You're absolutely right. However, I would think that it's a good idea that the federal government, if they have the resources to find out maybe what type of answers we may need in society, they're more than welcome to suggest them to people.
That is silly.
That I find is what's going on.
That is silly. That the federal governments don't suggest, sir. They legislate. They either make laws or they don't make laws. There's no such thing as a government suggestion.
Of our government is the House of Representatives and the senators. That is state representatives. The legislature, the people who pass laws, come from the states. Okay?
Yeah, but when you have a senator like Barbara Boxer who goes from California to Washington to dictate what they can do in Florida off their coast or in their interior, then you cross the line. Just because you come from the states doesn't mean that your power isn't limited.
Hey, Barbara Boxer doesn't have any more voting power in her seat than any other representative.
But where does the federal government get the authority to tell people in Florida what they can and cannot do?
They're not telling them what they can and cannot do. I don't see how you're drawing to that conclusion. I think that when somebody stands up and says, hey, here's some other technology and stuff that we can use in
That's
society.
Not what government does, sir. This isn't debate class. Government isn't getting up and making these really kooky suggestions for the future. They make laws that we have to live with, and then they confiscate our wealth to put them into practice. It's not like, well, wouldn't it be... it's not like the Congress sits around going, wouldn't it be great if we all had solar panels? Yeah, that's so cool. They either vote or they don't vote.
But let's also define government here. I believe personally that, well, I would hope that it's a widespread belief that our government in this country is of the people, meaning consisting of people like you and I, and for the people, consisting of people of you and I and others. Okay, so we keep painting the federal government as this big, bad bully behind curtains and whatnot. We're the ones who elect these people. We have the power, the vote.
No, you're missing the point, sir, that first of all, we're not a democracy. We do not live in a democracy. Or at least I should say we've become a democracy, but we weren't set up as a democracy. The idea that because the people elect somebody doesn't mean that they're empowered and endowed with power to do whatever the hell they want, no matter how right they think they are to do it. The federal government is the most limited authority in our domestic lives. Read the Constitution. There's only 18 things they're allowed to do with the money that they raise from federal taxation. That's it. This idea that the smartest people in the world have gravitated to Washington through the electoral process and they're up there just coming up with all these really great ideas is garbage, sir. It's absolute garbage.
And it's a shame. And you're right about that. I definitely have lost a lot of faith in our democratic process in this country. I don't think that our representatives are representing the people anymore. And you're right. It's an absolute shame, and it's a sham. But I don't think that the ideas of, a big Tea Party, argument is, well, we just need to get rid of the government.
No one's saying get rid of the government. Where have you heard anybody say anarchy, sir? Where have you heard anybody say anarchy? Where?
I've heard these Tea Party members who are getting elected into public office saying the government's the problem. Well, why the hell are you running for government if you don't want government?
Because saying a limited form of government as prescribed by the Constitution versus this monster that we have right now, it's not saying that somebody shouldn't occupy the seat of government. They should occupy it according to what the Constitution prescribes. That's what these Tea Party candidates are saying. Nobody's saying that we're just going to blow up Washington.
And I would advocate that if people want to see the government return to the people's hands, and I wish I could remember who, I think it was Thomas Paine who said, only way a functioning democracy can work is if people are actually involved in the democracy. And the thing is about it, when it comes to general elections, or even when it comes to local elections, I think it's a total of maybe 25%, maybe 30% at most in most elections that actually vote. And so we have a 30% democracy. We're 30% there, and until people actually really get involved, they pick up a newspaper, they read. I don't care where you get your information from, but at least that you're passionate about what's going on in society and getting informed, however you want to do that. Read whatever book you want.
Well, Jeremy, here's the problem with that, and I got to get some other calls. The problem with this idea of getting involved, does that mean voting and then paying taxes, or voting so somebody else pays taxes? 47% of the people who file income tax returns with the federal government have no tax liability. So saying getting involved means, are you willing to pay for this yourself? That's a huge difference to what this democracy has come that said, well, I could vote on anybody else's stuff if I want to.
Yeah, and one more point, Mr. Wilkow, that I'd like to bring up. And this is something for future calls and future conversations. But here's a suggestion. When I file my tax return, I think that there should be a column there that says, what percentage of your taxes do you want in certain areas? You get to choose. I want 10% of my income tax to go towards military. I want another 5% in Medicaid, Medicare. I want this percentage in this. That's when we'll have a true democracy. When we can choose as voters and individuals where we pay our tax dollars, that's when we'll have a real democracy.
Well, you'd have to amend the Constitution. Thank you very much for the call, because it says Congress has the power to lay and collect taxes, and then it's Congress that has the power to spend revenue. At that point, that you would eliminate the need for Congress. You would just have the IRS add up all the money that comes in, where people want it to go, and then disperse it accordingly.